Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. This segment is brought to you by Arbor Crowd. For institutional quality crowdfunding, visit arborcrowd.com. Our topic today is the Trump effect on the economy and commercial real estate. My guest is David Kessler. He's National Director of Real Estate Industry Practice for CohnReznick. And David, in the previous segment, you were talking about repatriation and a lot of things that are going on in the economy right now might tend to lead to some inflation. So what do you think about the possibility of rising rates moving forward?
That's a good question. You know, I do see the Fed continually ticking the rates up. I think, rates obviously have been artificially low over the last, decade, which was important and useful for, getting us out of the recession. And it's been extremely productive for real estate activity and investment. I think, we're going to start to see rates tick up. We might see rates tick up, as high as 200 to 300 basis points over the next, 12 to 18 months to 24 months. But I don't think it's going to have as dramatic of an impact to the real estate, sector as some may think. I think fundamentals are really strong. We also are seeing an abundance of debt capital available through private equity funds and debt funds, as well as, local banks are still very heavy into the real estate lending arena, as well as some of the national banks. So I am not afraid of rates ticking up. I think rates, will continue to tick up.
Right, and interest rates rising is a good sign for the economy, right? It means things are going well enough to try to normalize interest rates. But that's a pretty hefty hike that you just mentioned there, if I heard you right, 200 to 300 basis points. So if you're getting a mortgage today at 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe you're at 5, 6, 7% in a year or two. That's pretty.
Yeah, I think we're going to see rates in the 5, 6% in a year or two. And I think the Fed has indicated as such, and folks would be wise to lock in rates now, especially on assumable loans. But the capital stack really is a function of the strategy for the property. So if we're talking about long-term holds, certainly lock in now. We're seeing a lot of people float interest rates with caps, and that makes a lot of sense also. And we haven't seen a lot of shakeout from the maturing CMBS. Last year was a big year for CMBS maturities. There was very little distress from a relative standpoint, and I think we're going to see available capital, to refinance these loans. Some may be underwater, and there could be some distress, but I think that provides for opportunity, for in the marketplace.
Yeah, oh, those are good points. We have a couple lenders that they're doing loans that are fully amortizing for 15 or 20 years with no balloons and no calls. And I think if you think you're in a rising rate environment, and if you feel like this cycle's been a little long in the tooth, those could be some great loans if you can secure them at reasonable rates. And and as you mentioned, the outlook for commercial real estate is good. The fundamentals are good. Job growth is good. And then we also have infrastructure, right? So what do you think the real impact of infrastructure improvements are going to be? I mean, it sounds like it could be a lot more jobs.
Yeah, I think there will be, and I think infrastructure is one of the, excuse the pun, one of the trump cards. And we're going to see, Trump is very, very long on infrastructure. The White House just published a legislative outline for rebuilding infrastructure in America. They asked Congress to act on a bill that'll stimulate $1.5 trillion of new investment over 10 years. They've requested shortening the process for awards to 2 years or less. They're addressing rural infrastructure needs, rural utilities, empowering state and local authorities. The big goal is to train American workforce, strengthening ties to the workforce with college and institutions to really align colleges and formal study with the future job needs, as well as technical training programs. So I think it's going to be a big boost to the economy. I think it stands to be seen how this is going to be rolled out. It looks like it's going to be in the form of a leveraged financing, where the government's going to provide awards to state and local communities, which will then award projects in public-private partnerships. And they're addressing infrastructure, transit-oriented, as well as airports, GSA-owned property to sell, dispose, government-owned land and buildings. So it's wide-reaching. I think what it's going to do is it's going to have a big impact on construction pricing and construction jobs, which is also going to have an impact on the rest of the real estate sector. And I think this really highlights the discussion on immigration policy. Because you look around and as there's a big job demand that the immigration population fills within the construction sector.
Yeah.
So that's going to have to work its way to making sense as well.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: we're talking with David Kessler with CohnReznick, and David, if some people are concerned about how long these good times have been here, like, oh, can this really last? It's been a long cycle. When you look at these changes in the tax rates, you look at the reduced regulations, you look at repatriation, you look at the jobs that you just described that could be coming our way, did you kind of lengthen in your mind or in your crystal ball of how long these good times are going to last, how long this cycle could be, kind of this great?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a great question. And, I think a lot of real estate developers and fund managers are scratching their heads over as to, what should the strategy be? And the stock market, dramatic fall over the last couple of weeks also has impacted the allocation plans. So where are we in the cycle? I think we're going to see an extended cycle. And, there was only one other cycle that lasted longer than 10 years, and, we're coming up on our 10-year mark. And so there's a lot of concern as to when is the shoe going to drop. But I think real estate fundamentals are very strong. And I think that low interest rates have helped, but there's an enormous amount of capital that really wants to be invested in real estate. And some of that's foreign capital, Michael. You see a lot of foreign capital coming in as a safe haven in the U.S. that's happy with 3.5% or 4% returns because they feel very safe with their capital being in the U.S., where their own economies might have a declining principal base to their corpus. So with the abundance of capital, the question is, where are we going to see opportunities? And I think, we're seeing pricing become a concern in the gateway markets, and we're seeing a lot of opportunity in secondary and tertiary markets that have really strong fundamentals with job growth, with a lot of technologies that are coming on, healthcare, and Salt Lake City, Seattle, Denver. We're seeing big growth in Atlanta, Raleigh, Austin, Nashville, cities like that. I think we're starting to see more institutional capital thinking about those areas, and we're also starting to see a lot more. We don't know, with the millennials, there was a big push to be downtown, live, work, play. 24-hour cities. I think we're seeing a lot of that happening in the inner suburbs, or exurbs, as we like to say, where there's big mixed-use development. At some point, people need to raise their families. They might not want to be downtown, and I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity for building live, work, play environments in really vibrant, close-in suburbs.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. So I've heard some tips from you today, David. Look at close-in suburbs. Maybe consider some of the secondary markets, tertiary markets in some cases. Go long on your financing maybe, or at least look at your rates, and maybe try to lock in some rates and look at your financing now. What would be a fourth tip from you to close your interview today?
I would say now's the time to be conservative and, really look at fundamentals in the long term. I see a lot of people focusing now on income producing properties. So, where you have a component, that is a value add strategy, but still creates current income. We see a lot of folks looking at, and, the big pension funds are starting to scratch their heads and wonder, are they over allocated into the equity markets, and maybe, should continue to shift more into, alternatives, like real estate. Which is fared pretty well over the last 10 years.
Yeah,
so I would say caution.
Yeah, so maybe a good time to adjust from equity to debt, I guess, is what you're saying. Well, David, great information as usual. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
And stay with us. We're going to have more on the Trump effect on the economy and commercial real estate right after this short break. Stay with us. I'm Michael Bull. This is America's Commercial Real Estate Show.